Well, Jared, I was looking for a nice gun, nice inexpensive gun, one that's at a pretty manageable price point. It matches the wage you pay me. And, I figured I'd get something nice and small for me.
Yeah, something used, like a heritage or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
But everybody tells me, it's like, well, dude, that's heading straight for the evidence locker. What am I supposed to do with that information?
Well, I think it goes to the evidence locker depending on the user, not necessarily the gun. But it would make sense that cheaper firearms have a higher likelihood of being used in a crime compared to a more expensive firearm. Now, there's several reasons for that. So 2022-2023 timeframe, when you pull up the trace request that the ATF had, meaning a firearm is used in a crime, they're gonna do a trace request. They're trying to figure out who the gun was transferred to throughout this course of time. It was over 12% of the time that a trace request was done, it was done on a Glock.
The Glock is interesting.
Which was the most common firearm that a trace request was performed on. So in theory, Glocks were used in crimes more than any other firearm, whether that's long guns or handguns. And in second place was Taurus at like 7%. So Glocks aren't necessarily known for being super cheap. Glocks are affordable, but they're not super cheap. Glocks are very prevalent. The idea of super cheap guns or the ones that are always used in crime can make sense, but it also certainly depends on what's the prevalence of those guns. Because like Sky, for example, you could get a Sky handgun for really cheap several years ago. Now you can't get a Sky at all anymore. So you would think during that time frame, oh yeah, there's a bunch of Skies, whatever, used in crimes because they're cheap. Not necessarily the case because they're not that prevalent. However, you are not gonna see like an Atlas, for example, that's gonna show up on a crime scene because it simply boils down to the fact that the person who is buying the super expensive firearm, they are not involved in violent crimes. They may be involved in other crimes.
Our government is ran by Satanists and pedophiles and all that kind of stuff.
But they're not involved in violent crimes, and chances are if they made an investment that was that expensive, they're probably gonna lock it up. So it's gonna be very hard for a criminal to actually find that firearm and use it in a crime. It is simply boils down to prevalence, and prevalence usually goes hand in hand with cost.